changed the wording from getting up on him than waking up. Could you tell me why you're skating?
It is. In 4 years ago, they were accusing each other, and they now become a team.
But the two candidates 5 years ago, they are from some family. You have to remember that, okay?
Then the other question is?
The final question is, what do you think the achievement this current president did so far for the democracy?
Yeah.
How he get elected if Taiwan doesn't have democracy? You keep saying the current president promoted so much democracy in Taiwan. If Taiwan does not have a democracy, how did he get a vote as a president, as the first opposition leader?
The 19 become more and more democratic because of pressure from the opposition. And the opposition at that time, including DPP and many people like us from outside, fighting for freedom for Taiwan.
You only represent
Number two, I'd like to answer your question. You said they're only 60%, they're 60% on the other side, and that's precisely the problem, that if there any difficulty in today's chance government's performance, it's because of that. KMT still control the legislature, okay? 60% or more of the legislators are KMT. They boycott and they vote against many reforms. And Taiwan's constitution has been bastardized to the extent that there is no way you can govern because there is no veto. It's neither a presidential system nor a parliamentary system. The bill or any proposal from the president cannot, if voted against by the legislature, he has no recourse. Not like America. U.S. government president has the veto power, and then the bill can be sent back to the Congress, and Congress has to have 2/3 of the vote to send it back as a congressional veto. Taiwan constitution has been changed by the KMT control legislature in the past to make it unworkable.
I can be some kind of a new immigrants from the Taiwanese communities. So I may provide maybe a different perspective. Although I have to regret that I may be too late to run away from the KMT rules. But as you can see, that may have been polluted by the so-called KMT educations. But my first question is addressed to Professor Chen. And we noticed that there is uneven support for the DPPs in Taiwan Island. For example, in all kinds of elections, DPP has enjoyed a very comfortable lead on a certain part of Taiwan, but it is comparatively very weak in the central part and northern part of Taiwan. And this unevenness is not only reflected on the areas, it's also reflected on different generations. For example, the younger generation under 20s and the older generations, older than 60s, are more supportive of the DPP. But the mainstream populations, the sector that between the 30s and the 50s, are more supportive of the so-called PAM group camp. Can you explain this? How come all this kind of unevenness happened? Can you explain this? And also, some people criticize that DPP is very good at campaigning, but not so good at governance. But maybe because some people say that maybe because the DPP does not enjoy a very good social basis. That means that he did very well in building up ruling coalitions for his governance. For example, in the past, the KMT has been very successful in building very effective ruling coalitions, including businessmen and local factions. But after the democratizations, this coalition is also collapsing too. But my question is that if the DPP win this election again, on what basis, on what social basis is the DPP going to build an effective ruling coalition so that people won't criticize again that the DPP is only good at campaigning but not good at governance? My second question will address to a friend from the PAN's group. PAN Blues always insisted that he can better manage the so-called cross-strait relations better than DPP because they say DPP is a troublemaker. But my question is, on what basis the PAN group can claim that he can better manages the cross-strait relations. For example, the chairman Lian once said that one of his options is that he would like to put aside temporarily the dispute of sovereignties, so that both sides of the Taiwan Strait can sit down and talk. But my question is, how can you put aside a country's sovereignties? How can you solve the problem without touching the sensitive issue of sovereignties? My question is this. And my third question would address to Professor Handels, because this question I would like to address to another party which is not present here, that is party across the strait. My question is that is there any possibility that China, sorry, I still use the word China, will be satisfied with this current option? That is that in this particular issues of the referendums, Chinese has changed its past tactics by applying pressures on the United States to try to move Taiwan to a certain acceptable behaviors. That is that he has stopped using coercive or harassing measures to directly put pressures on Taiwanese people. But that put it in a very awkward position, because he finds that he cannot control the political agenda on the island, and he has to mediate his positions through the United States. But according to my observation, this strategy is not very effective, because even though the U.S. has succeeded in watering down the referendum questions that the President Chen posed to the public, but the United States did not force the President Chen to give up the referendums. So if this strategy is proves to be very ineffective, will China change its strategies in the near futures? Thank you.
One very important thing, because I work in the area, you talk about the statistics showing that older generations support DPP, 35 to 50s support KMTs. I think it's a myth because of the inaccuracy and unreliability of survey in Taiwan. I happen to be the auditor of the Statistics Canada, the best in the country, in the world. I know how this survey is conducted. In Taiwan, 30% of the respondents refused to participate. A further 30% will say no opinion as answer. Okay, this is typical survey. And so there's no question about this age in the survey, because they want to save money. Number two, you know what the most difficult one to survey? The people with cellular phones. You don't have phone number listed anywhere. I would say the most younger generation in Taiwan support Chen Shui-bian, but it's only a guess, okay? The other thing you talk about, the government's inability to govern. I told you, some of the things is because of the constitutional weakness and the KMT controlled legislature. Although DPP is the biggest party in legislature today, it still doesn't have the majority. So it makes it more difficult, okay, to think. I just remember this question. I think I turn the thing to Professor Zhuai.
To answer your question, I think that the cross-strait relations has a long time been a question, unresolved. I don't think you can resolve it, by 10 or even 20 years. All right. Even Deng Xiaoping, before he died, he wants to get on the unification before his death, right? He wants to get on right on the point, but he couldn't do it. Now I think that what happened is with Lian Zhan. I'm not answering on behalf of the blue stance, because I'm not, okay. But I understand Lian in person, okay. Like I know him personally. I know him. He is a guy. He doesn't want to promote independence for sure, And he is talking about one China. And you have the Taiwan, the Republic of China is already, a sovereignty we're talking about, okay? You talk about sovereignty, Taiwan is there. You don't need independent, to deal with, the cross-strait relationship. With this concept, you have the constitution, you have the sovereignty, you have the one China policy, but self-expressed, okay? Then we can talk about the problem. The problem can be lasting for so many, many years. But with Chen, I'm afraid, when, like, the China man is really mean business, okay? Like, I know the history. I'm a professor. This lady didn't, really have very short introduction on me.
If you read the Shanghai Communique, everything is laid out.
Yeah.
For a long time.
For a long time.
Yeah.
And this is very important. And I'm a professor of history for so many years. And I know Chinese history. And I know, what happened in between Communist China and the Republic of China. So as long as you have the Republic of China, the name is there, the constitution is there, Communist China is not going to touch Taiwan proper. That's a safeguard.
I do have a based on Canadian, American, and UK solution. 250 years ago, independent war was won. Many people who do not want to be part of the independent American state went back to England. Some of the loyalists came to Canada. Look at what happened today. The US, the United Kingdom, and Canada are the best ally in the international arena. Why don't we let the history run its own course? And Taiwan and China may be one day brotherly state. Okay.
And I agree with you that there's evidence to suggest that it's very dangerous to try to use American influence on Taiwan in a presidential election year in both countries, especially given the consistent ambiguity of American policy on Taiwan. I agree with you on that, and it makes me wonder also about the PRC government's ability to manage democratic politics at all. I mean, you see how they're handling things in Hong Kong these days. They're not willing to play the democratic game in any way. So I don't know why they would in Taiwan either. But what they do seem to think they can effectively do, and I think there's some grounds to say that they can, is build a class of red capitalists in Taiwan that will be friendly to them over the longer term. And they've done that in Hong Kong, and I don't see why that wouldn't be the primary long-term strategy in Taiwan.
I have a speaker's list.
Professor Chung, yeah, I heard you the comparison of the two regimes, Kuomintang and the DDP, that kind of economic performance. Yeah, I heard you that kind of comparison. Is you just choose the, I don't know. If you want to compare, you got to base on the current, current status, such as recently until now. You don't compare 2001 and 2002, and compare to 1978 or 1979 or something like that. You will compare based on the current, from the DPP until now. You will based on my on my knowledge, I know now the performance of the Taiwanese economy now is very good. Now it become the number one in the four dragon before. That's the number one. I want to correct this one. And the second one, you say that the President Bush asked when the premium one. Yeah, he visited the President Bush. The Bush asked China couldn't use the force to change the status you didn't mention that. I just want to edit that. And another one is that, okay, now the Taiwanese economy already 25 or 24% depend on China. So if based on the safety of the Taiwan's future economy, we got to be considered. Because if you from the investment point of view, if you just put 124% in one investment, that's a very risk. Yeah. So we got to consider that kind of a factor. If okay, China, that kind of political uncertainty, you don't know. If you depend on too much on one investment, that can affect your safety. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The previous years or whatever, and in the beginning I mentioned this is only my personal opinion, okay? And I choose the examples, research examples, simply because I want to mention this, because this is we're talking about the Asian economic force, in particular on that kind of, that many years of difficulty. Still, I expect DPP should do much, much better. Okay, so regarding Premier One, why I didn't mention Premier One to, I think again, it's a personal opinion. I don't think Premier One makes, regarding the Taiwan presidential election, I don't think that he plays that much of power. Okay, I think that Bush and the White House, they definitely pushed quite a lot of pressure on Chen. And I'd like to ask my colleague, my friend Dr. Lee, do you have any comment on what what this gentleman asked?
How can you prove it? How can you prove that the Kuomintang would do better?
No.
No. I said that if now the economy of the Taiwan, you got to compare the currently. You couldn't say compare 2 years, right? Because now is the election year. The voter just want to know the current situation, not the 2 years ago. Okay?
Economy is not going to change in one day. There's a momentum.
Okay, all my 1996, 1997, 1998.
Yes, 1997.
So he has lost credibility with the Chinese government. Number two, I don't think Mr. Chen wanted to talk to the Chinese government because he has a hidden agenda. He wanted Taiwan independence. When he stood on the platform and said, "Long live the Republic of China, 中华民国万岁." Do you think he really meant it? In his heart, he meant the Republic of Taiwan. Play games with the voters. I feel sorry for him. He is like in the circus, walking on a piece of cable. When this side of the people is yelling, he would lean towards the other side a little. If this side voiced the objection, he would lean to the other side. Now, eventually, he will fall down. But 2 weeks from now, he's falling. In this election, none of the parties, both Mr. Chen and Mr. Ling, are failing to address the issues. Dr. Cho mentioned the 2 issues. I'm adding a couple more issues to it. Number 1 is the sincerity and the credibility. Who is more believable? And I don't want to mention the election promises Mr. Chen Shui-bian made in the year 2000. I think he made at least 12. He's reneged at least on half a dozen of it. 所以我说 the number 1, he played game It's 愚弄选民。Number two, failing to address the issues, 避重就轻，浑水摸鱼。And number three, as I just said, sincerity and credibility, 诚信扫地。And there's another one, lack of achievements in general. Mr. Chen searched very hard, only found 3 of them, which to me can be achieved by a community organization, such as the Chinese Community Center of Ontario. 所以叫做政绩平平。And last one is an issue recently came up, is about the so-called 黑金 black gold. The presidential palace has become the center of black gold. If you wanted to be invited to eat 水饺 dumpling, you have to make a political contribution in order to be invited. And both parties, but Mr. Ling seems to learn a lesson from previous elections. But Mr. Chen this time is using all kinds of smear tactics in this election campaign. Can he score? I'm sorry, he cannot score. Even the holding hands on February 28th, he did not score. Because according to a survey by TVBS, Mr. Ling is still leading by 5%. I know Mr. Chen doesn't believe surveys. But in Ontario, the Liberals were leading by 5%, and the Liberals were elected.
This is Canada, not Taiwan.
Dr. Cho spoke about, these are not his words, they're my words, Taiwan being hostage to the billions of dollars of investment in mainland China and the trade with China. And second, and nobody mentioned, there are perhaps 1 million Taiwanese now living in China. Commonly you see figures of 500,000 in Shanghai and 500,000 south of there along the coast. I understand from remarks you made that they don't vote in the Taiwanese election, but I wonder how many of them will be going back to vote. Which party would they be likely to vote for? What is the future for Taiwan when 1 million people have chosen to go to the PRC? It seems clear to me that they feel there's no loss, or not a great loss in personal freedom if they've chosen to go across. Presumably there are economic reasons finding jobs there, but what impact will they have on the long-term future of Taiwan and China? Dr. Chen talked about Canada and England and the United States being great friends now, but you know, another alternative might be, and the parallels are inexact, but think of Hawaii and the United States, or Puerto Rico and the United States. I don't know which, I'm not an expert and I'm not pushing these ideas. Well, my question is there any real possibility of independence when 1 million Taiwanese live on the mainland and I don't know how many billions of dollars are there? It seems to me the threat of independence is so costly to Taiwan that it just won't happen. I don't know what the forces will be and how that will work it out, but it seems to me that's the likely outcome.
When you elect your own president, you have your own government, your own currency, your army is independent and sovereign country. And I agree with you, there are people who live in mainland at this moment and they have tremendous investment over there. But it's just like Canadian living in the States. They have to take their own risk. And they are there, seem to enjoy some kind of protection because Taiwan is an independent country. If Taiwan is part of China, look what will happen to those Taiwanese in China would be very, very different. Just look at Hong Kong, okay? Number two, about this a question of, I don't know why you say Hawaii, Costa Rica, and the states. Are you talking about Taiwan being the 51st state?
No. Remain, what they say, the
yes.
Commonwealth, Puerto Rico has chosen not to become part of the United States. And when I was talking about Taiwanese independence, I was talking about a formal declaration of independence. I do understand that Taiwan is independent now, but why?
The only Everywhere in the world, there's only one China, and I agree with one China policy as long as it's one China, one Taiwan. And you talk about the communique, Shanghai communique is the second one. The first one is Canada-China communique in 1970 on the claim of China's claim of Taiwan as its territory. Canada say we take note, okay? And in the states follow suit 9 years later by using the term acknowledge. So at that time, we were told by the Canadian government, whenever we write to our family, we can never say Republic of China, we have to say Taiwan. We were told everything imported from Taiwan has to be marked, made in Taiwan. And that's why MIT is very important these days, okay? So the policy of one China back then was one Taiwan, one China. But because of the insistence of Chiang dynasty, the KMT regime, that forced to say that the China is only one China, which will include China and Taiwan. And if we insist ROC would be an independent country, then there will be a civil war between China and Taiwan. And I don't want to see that. I think that's why I said Taiwan-China solution can be found here in North America, US, Canada, and UK, 250 years ago. That's my point.
Just like Canada and the United States, at this stage, that's what, for your information, quite a large group will return to Taiwan to vote. And also, I understand they vote, not this time, for Chen, okay, for Chen Shui-bian. I think they vote, for KMT simply because they see more future with the new government, because they don't want to see the achievement they built, between Taiwan and China, the business oriented, I'm talking about the business they built. And they don't want to ruin this kind of, chances. This is my research only, okay? Now, if this gentleman doesn't agree with me, whenever you go to this kind of questions, you have to go to the statistics. Even I quote you at this moment, a large group of Taiwanese in mainland China will return to Taiwan to vote, and their vote is focusing on given to Nian. And I have papers, I have statistics, okay? So to answer your question, yes, they love Taiwan. Everybody in the room loves Taiwan. And they want to vote, no problem. $2,000 is nothing, regarding, if you want to vote, cast your vote, 2,000 is nothing to answer your
Susan Henders, perhaps, to comment on this, because as I'm listening to these two wonderful presentations, both of which I appreciated very much, I was struck by how each presenter, even though officially each one is not a member of the party they're speaking for, which itself says something about Taiwan's democracy, but that each speaker's presentation in a way reflected two very different visions of democracy and of politics in Taiwan. So Mr. Chen's was focused on the issue of love of Taiwan, the past history of corruption, of oppression, and a new vision for Taiwan, which is brought by Mr. Chen, and a hope for the future, and the 228 Kanqiu was something, in a way you could say, well, it didn't mean anything, because what does it say? It just says we all love Taiwan. But when you get 10% of the population of a country standing in line holding hands saying we love Taiwan, that's a very powerful emotional statement, which obviously has a political impact. So that despite the people's comments on the reliability of polls in Taiwan, all polls have shown that since the 228, the DPP camp has come up about 2 to 3%. So whether they were already leading and are even further ahead, or whether they were behind and now have closed the gap, there has been a trend which shows the power of emotion in politics, the love of Taiwan. Or Mr. Zhuo's presentation was also a reflection of politics in Taiwan, because many people say, politics is a practical thing. What about efficient government? What about the economy? And we can't, we shouldn't play games with China, because China is a pretty big player, and if they sit on us, we might get squashed. So it's a very practical, but also a very democratic vision, which is important in Taiwan. And I wonder if this two types of vision, democracy, is something which Taiwan is one of the few places where you can still see. It certainly doesn't happen in the United States anymore. They got rid of Dean as soon as they could, the Democrats, and it doesn't happen in Canada. But the other thing that struck me, despite the fact that in an election the differences are emphasized, in answering questions, I heard Mr. Chan saying something that Lian Zhan has said. Well, this is a question of history. This can be resolved over time. That you don't have to declare independence. This is a historical thing that could resolve in history. And Mr. Zhou said something which I heard Chen Shui-bian saying. I don't have to declare independence because we already have the Republic of China as a sovereign country, which suggests to me that despite the sound and fury, the differences between the two parties really are very small. And I wondered if Susan Henders would comment on that. As well as the other two, but I would like to hear from Susan because she has such a good perspective.
Marketization in politics and the role of political business in political campaigns was trying to highlight that. Actually, I think in two ways. One is relating back to the question my colleague Michael Copeland asked about these people who now, Taiwan citizens who now live in mainland China, work there, what their role is in Taiwan politics these days in this kind of election. And perhaps the question isn't whether they'll vote, because some of them will, but although there's limited, I guess, playing capacity to get everybody back to vote, so not everybody will, for that reason and other reasons. But where their influence and money will go, I think that's the key question, not how many of them will vote in this election. And the role of money in Taiwan elections matters an awful lot and carries a lot of weight, not only in terms of who wins elections, but who carries influence with who wins the election. So that I think that for whomever wins the election, getting back to Michael's point, whatever side wins is going to have to pay an awful lot of attention to business and where the money is. And the structural predicament that the Taiwan economy finds itself in, which I don't think can be entirely blamed on any government's policies, but is a consequence of the opening up of the Chinese economy and its ability to suck in investment and suck in trade like in no other economy on the face of the earth at the moment. And that is not a consequence of who wins the Taiwan election, but whoever wins it has to face that and will be constrained by it in terms of its fiscal resources and its options in continuing to try to juggle the China question.
For your comments. The first question is, with the speculation from KMT and the ally PFP suggesting that the KO could rise if they are mistaken in referendum voting procedure. It also remains us that there is a riot occurred in front of KMT headquarters after the presidential election in March year 2000. Do you believe the KMT and PFP supporters will peacefully accept the outcome of this coming election? This is the first question. And second question, both KMT Chairman Lian Zhan and PFP Chairman James Song held various senior positions in the martial law era under KMT regime during the prior to the mid-1990s. Both Lian and Song do not have clear political vision for Taiwan's future development and the personal integrity problem. How can you convince the people to vote for them.
My name is Willie Cheng. You just mentioned earlier that when Chen Shui-bian became the president in 2000, he got nothing from his predecessor. Secret file, everything, nothing. So he caused obstruction for his performing of duties. You mentioned that. But I don't want to point out that who is the predecessor? That's Li Tengfei. Who is Li Tengfei? Li Tengfei is his father. Li Tengfei and Chen Shui-bian now working as father and son. And how can he blame his father not handing over all those secret documents to him while he is the president? He was the president. You just show us a book written by Chen Shui-bian. But you believe it? I don't. Because Chen Shui-bian always blamed on somebody else for his inability to govern the government. So don't believe that book. Me too.
I'm going to answer for that gentleman. He asked what the President Li Chen Shui-bian do, what thing good for Taiwan. As I know, my friend, if they are under KMT, their parents all have a pension. They come this country, take a pension from home. If you are not a KMT, all other party, we never got pension. My parents who lived for 80 years never got pension. Until last couple of years, start to get some allowance from the government. My mother very poor. I come here, I got send money home. But now I heard, I can proud of my president. Now she start get some allowance from home. But I know all my friends, I'm not against nobody, but I know whoever, they are the party of the KMT, they got pension allowance long ago. Cause 10 years ago, I come here with a lot of pension. I'm back home, a lot of people, if you are not belong to that party, you don't get pension.
I think it's addressed to me. I got some example like you have.
No, you did say what they did
I got a lot of
good to
friends
the
here
country.
that have pension.
You did say what they did good to the country. I'm just talking about economic side. And my English is not that good. Sorry about. Thank you for a chance to let me speak up. Thank you.
Questions together. I just explain to people who doesn't know what happened after the election in year 2000. Lin Zhan lost, and they blamed the loss to the then KMT chair, Li Tenghui. So Li Tenghui was ousted by then and his supporter. So you can see, although Li was the president, he was the chair of the KMT, he really doesn't have the total control of the party and the government. I'm not saying that Mr. Chen didn't get anything in terms of transition paper, but many important transition paper, particularly slush funds, national security things, there are nothing to be found, or only copies, and we don't know whether it's complete or not, was on the file, okay? So yes, Li has been ousted by the KMT, and he's now the supporter of Mr. Chen. And that tells you how the KMT party works. But it also tells you that really whatever Chen can get in terms of transitional help is very little. Thank you.
Okay. You have 3 questions, am I right? Two questions.
Yeah.
The other question is martial law. You were talking about martial law.
The first question is, do you believe
Yeah.
the KMT supporter will be peacefully to accept the election outcome?
Okay.
The next coming presidential election.
In the House,
because they have a riot
in the ousting of Mr. Lee, there was a riot in Taipei.
In the KMT head office.
Okay.
That's the first one. Second one, how to convince the people to vote for them and some because they have a bad record in their political view in the Taiwan future development and his personal own integrity, the problem. You have know that's 做心票案还有逃税这些东西 how to convince the people to vote for him.
Okay, 心票案 you talk about 心票案 talk about all this you really have the wrong focus at this stage now, okay? Because Song and Nian came out as a team, okay, really, not only against Chen, but against Li Denghui, all right? Now, Nian's failure in 2000, strictly not his failure, actually, because he was under Li Denghui, okay? Li Denghui's influence, like
who is a candidate? Who is a candidate?
Candidate is him, but you don't have to lead them with yes.
If I do a business, I lost the business. I can't blame my father.
Okay, can you tell me? The same thing like Chen Shui-bian. Do you think Chen Shui-bian really failed in running the mayor, the Taipei mayor, failed? No, Chen Shui-bian failed because Li Denghui has already arranged a better position for him.
This is a big news. That's a popular top secret we haven't heard before.
Oh, everybody knows it. Who is the Josia? Josia, in Bible. Okay, who is the one that leading Chen Shui-bian to be the president?
Can I explain a little bit?
No. Who mentioned her mother's situation, I thought that was actually maybe an important point to end on. We've spent an awful lot of time this evening talking about big, grand political issues, but for at least some Taiwan voters, ordinary folks, it's the real basic issues about social inclusion, about the recognition of rights, and so on, which may in fact profoundly influence the choices they make in a couple of weeks. And it will be interesting to see how those sorts of issues play out in the election indeed.
Taipei Economic Cultural Office, thank you so much. Thank you so much.
It probably is treating the Taiwanese run factory. Sorry to read that.